risk money, why you should spend money on this and not that. Not really very surprising, we are primarily an Australian organisation. The vast majority of our team is based in Melbourne, Australia, but our DFIR team utilises the follow the sun model.
That's no idea what I do.
Australia hands over to me, I hand over to North America hands back to New Zealand and Australia. We are sort of looking to break into the UK market this year. If anyone's happening to the Zy-Wave at the end of March, big insurance conference, you would be very surprised at how many insurance people and lawyers like to get absolutely smashed after talking conferences all day. I still have numbers of people that I met last year, no idea who they are, never spoke to them again, but we were absolutely adamant that we would be speaking to each other again soon and frequently. So yeah, this time please don't take my mobile number, but please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Quite happy with that. And just before we get into the content, some items of housekeeping. There are some screenshots here, they are all from real investigations, and so I have had to obfuscate some bits and pieces to make sure we don't accidentally out somebody. And I've tried to take screenshots from different investigations, so hopefully nobody can piece it together. That is not a challenge. It's also not intended to be a customer-facing deck. I do like to make jokes every now and then. When you're talking to CISOs and board members, they're about the business, their time is valuable, they don't like you waffling and trying to tell jokes. They're not there to be your friend. Please don't, I suppose without saying, but please do not fish your friends, your family, your co-workers, they will not be impressed. I've tried to make sure that there is value for everybody here, whether you want to be a blue team defender or a red team offensive pen tester. There should be value here. Red team, you'll get to see what actually works in the real life from threat actors and how they successfully fish people. Blue team, you'll get to see what threat actors do when they fish people and hopefully how to defend it. And finally, my fiancée isn't here today, she's having to look after our cats. She's got a kitten and she is a nightmare. She says my jokes are absolutely dreadful, so pity laughter is not required, but it is encouraged. Alright. So if you're sitting there wondering what the beck is this guy talking about, then let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is a business email compromise? It is pretty self-explanatory. It is as it sounds. It is access to a business email system by an unauthorized third party, henceforth referred to as the threat actor. Initial access is almost always through phishing emails, which then leads to credential harvesters and session token harvesters. Once they're inside, the primary motivation of the threat actor is to perform payment redirection fraud. That is when they intersect email chains with invoices, or they find documents on SharePoint with banking details and they tweak them, hoping that whoever's paying the invoice doesn't notice, and whoever it is that copies the bank details from SharePoint into the next invoice also doesn't notice. And then finally, sort of their end game is, once they've done what they're doing, they've either been caught and stopped or they've successfully been paid by somebody. They then send mass phishing emails to everybody in that mailbox's contact list, hoping that somebody clicks the link. The goal, threat actors want funds through payment redirection fraud, achieved by intercepting invoices or requesting bank account changes. Legitimately, probably one of the most common hooks that threat actors use is they'll email someone and say, hey, if you've not already paid this invoice, our bank account's going under like a tax audit, and so don't make a payment there, make a payment there instead. And it works surprisingly often. And that is down to a lack of suitable handling processes for changing bank details. Some people might just get an email and say, hey, we've updated our bank details, pay us instead, and go, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. I realise like black in such a light room was probably not the greatest idea, but I only finished these like last night, so I have a chance to do like a white version just in case. But yeah, the reason that this is so successful is because most small to medium businesses don't have a handling process for changing bank details. There was actually actually a fairly big legal case in Australia recently. I understand Australia is different from the UK, but we share a lot of the same legal frameworks, where someone paid a fraudulent invoice and were then ordered by the courts to pay it again to the legitimate invoice requester because they didn't make enough of an effort to validate the bank details. They tried to phone once, didn't get an answer, paid the credit after. It'll be quite interesting to see what happens when things like that hit the courts here. So a little bit of statistics. When we talk about Australian dollars, basically half it, and that's your exchange rate. Doesn't really work very well when it comes to my salary, because my salary is Australian dollars to GBP. It does, however, work fantastically when I go to Australia, because everything's like 50% off. My partner made me take a separate bag to bring her back, like Uggs, Converse, Crocs, because they were cheaper there than they are here. That was a weird conversation going through Singapore customs. So over 90% of our deeper engagements over the past 3 years have been Microsoft 365. GoDaddy is usually just a wrapper for M365, and occasionally we do get independent platform providers. But yeah, typically Microsoft 365 is shared online. We see, so the average loss of Australian businesses according to the Signals Directorate is $55,000. We see an average of about $76,000, with our largest being $750,000. Organisation was paying for shipping containers that contain like 90% of their stock for the coming year, and the threat active of the invoice, and well, they got a nice payday.
How many incidents do you see?
Sorry?
How many incidents, how many effects do you see a year?
In a year, a month, we'll probably see about 100. We usually see about 8 or 9 a month. We've got 3 on the board at the moment. And maybe shockingly, multi-factor authentication is enabled in 55% of our BUC cases. Multi-factor authentication has for the longest time been touted as the one solution. You will secure everything if you have MFA enabled. What we're seeing is actually these days that's not necessarily always the case. Cool, so we all can understand what business email compromise is. We've seen roughly what the impact is, and we've seen some statistics. So let's talk about how the threat actors actually perform this. How we do time-wise. Actually, we're doing okay. For those of you who haven't met me before, I am known for talking the hind legs of a donkey. For those of you who have met me before, I'm really sorry. Let's look at how the threat actor does what they do inside the mailbox, and how they get out there. Initial access usually starts with a harmless looking email. Right? Legitimate email sent via SharePoint. Right? It passes all the tests because it is a legitimate email. That's what I just said. Cool. I should probably look at the screen more to see what's coming up. And the email will probably be from someone that you've spoken to before. Whether it just be a fleeting email in the past, it will be someone that you have emailed with before. It passes the filters, it passes your mail filters, it passes your perimeter defences, it'll pass your iron ports, it'll pass the phishing training sniff test because it is a legitimate email. I can guarantee that probably most of you, especially students that think sharing documents back and forth, will probably have seen something like that before. So the phishing email, what we're seeing these days is actually we're seeing that the email is legitimate, and that then links to the actual phishing document. This one was really interesting because it was a Visio document. I've never seen a Visio document being used to phish before. I've seen PowerPoints, Excel documents, Word, odd OneNote here and there. With that, I finally got to check off the last box on my phishing bingo cards. The one I'm really holding out for this year is Access, and then I've got the entire office. Could happen, you never know. And then this is sort of when your anti-phishing training would kind of really start to spot errors. But for people who are users of technology, not necessarily experts like us, it's already passed the sniff test, so it should be fine, right? It then takes you to a sign-in page that looks exactly like Office 365. I actually have no idea. Can I minimize that? And basically what the adversary is doing is I'll say something. This is going story. What the threat actor is doing is they're essentially playing adversary in the middle. They're hosting this infrastructure here, probably on a web server like Evil Engine X. You enter your username and passwords. You take a photo. I want it to be good, so let me just start Well, that's it. I asked like the folk from these DEFCON's like Edinburgh chapter to come and take photos because like the partner can't be here, the folk that you can't be here, and they were like, we're going to wait until you're midway through a word and take really awkward ones. So it would be nice to have at least one nice photo. Lovely, thank you. You can go and attend the talk you really wanted to attend now. So yes, what we're seeing here is actually the adversary's hosting this infrastructure on something like an Evil Engine X server, and is essentially playing adversary in the middle. You put your email address into this and it will behave exactly like the Microsoft 365 login page. If it's a correct email, it will push you through to the password page. If it's a correct password, it will then prompt you for multi-factor authentication, assuming you have it enabled. And if you have multi-factor authentication, the threat actor is not interested in your credentials, they're interested in the session token that is granted to you by Microsoft 365 that says, this person's already authenticated, we know who they are, let them in. No, that's fine, leave the lights off, nobody can see my face, which is, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And this is roughly what the process looks like. If you don't have MFA, they will steal your credentials. If you do have MFA, they steal your session token, and then they use a browser add-on for Firefox or Chrome that will allow them to insert the session token into a cookie, and then next time they visit the M365 portal, it will just let them in. And then provided that they visit that site, so I think session tokens are the default expiry around about 24 hours. So provided they visit that portal at least once a day, that session token will keep renewing and means that a threat actor could be in that mailbox for weeks and weeks at a time. What do they do when they're inside the mailbox? So, as we've discussed, they are primarily concerned with extracting funds from the victim or related third parties. It's not the first time that we've seen threat actors intercept an email chain where actually they can't they can't doctor an invoice for the company that they've compromised, so they're going to spin up like a typo squatting domain for another company and get paid that way. Email chains with invoices, documents, particularly those on SharePoint, OneDrive, we've even seen them stored in Teams sometimes, payment details that they can change, and they're looking for any kind of like emails that are related to payment processing platforms, bank accounts, cloud accounts. They want access to your Xero, your MYOB, whatever other accounting platforms that small businesses use. If they can get access to them, they'll use them as well, because again, they can either redirect funds from those platforms directly, or they can amend invoices directly. So, quick question then. And I do apologise, I didn't say anything about audience participation, and to be honest, with the lights off, I don't think I can see anyone's hands raised unless you're right at the back, because it's like right behind you. Anyone want to take a stab in the dark? If you were a threat actor and you were doing this in a mailbox, and you had to hide emails from the legitimate owner of the mailbox, how would you do it?
So getting the deleted folder.
Very close.
Drafts.
Delete RSS.
Mail rules. Someone said mail rules. Unfortunately, I don't have socks with me today. I do have finger guns though. I'll give you some finger guns. Absolutely spot on. If you said mailbox rules, you would be absolutely correct. Specific emails, the threat actor will set up mailbox rules for specific emails. They'll mark them as read and then move them to rarely viewed folders. Quick show of hands, who in the past month has looked at the archive, conversation history, or RSS feed folders? That is more than I was expecting. Cool. But yeah.
If you wanted to put it in a deleted folder,
Yeah.
they're going to empty that and never look at it.
But that's it. So when it goes into the deleted folder, I'll actually show you in just a second because I've got some long
Okay, sorry,
codes.
go.
So yeah, best place to hide an email that you don't want anyone to see is in one of those three folders. We've heard deleted items, we've heard spam as well. Also very good choices. Predominantly, we see one of those three. This was 2023. This might actually have been my first ever business unit compromise case. It was a healthcare. They provide support for people who are going through like rehabilitation after like amputations and disabilities and things. And that is the email that the threat actor sent to a third party, word for word, to say, oh, we were updating the payment details. It turned out that the third party in this case actually phoned the number in the email signature and spoke to the threat actor. The threat actor got really pushy. They had a good working relationship with Astrid in this case. And when it all came to light, we all jumped on calls together. They were like, yeah, I thought Astrid was a bit mean recently. And it turns out that they nicknamed, good Astrid, bad Astrid, Astrid was bad Astrid. They faked the excuse there, that they're currently undergoing an audit process, and so won't be using the current bank account they have on file for any transactions at the moment. The victim then replied requesting the updated bank details for payment. So the invoice at that time hadn't been paid, so the threat actor amended it and resent it. There is the bottom half of that invoice. Obviously these sensitive things. And that is what the invoice looked like after it had been doctored. $31,559, so about 15k our side. Still is a lot of money, and this is just one of potentially 8, 9, 10, 11 PEC scams that a threat actor has on the go at any time. The infrastructure to run this kind of thing, like the evil NGX, the domains, the type of squatting, the mass mailing is peanuts compared to how much they actually legally do. The change wasn't challenged, and wasn't challenged by the receiving party, or wasn't challenged too much, and was paid. I think the company that was compromised only realised, or the parties only realised what happened about 30 days later when someone said, hey, by the way, have you guys paid that invoice? And they were like, yeah, we paid that invoice, we paid it a month ago. And I'm like, are you sure? Because we didn't get any. And that's when they realised what happened. And that, unfortunately, is how this is discovered more than not. So the end game, the threat actor has been paid. What next? Lateral movement to other mailboxes using the same or similar emails. This one probably isn't as slick as like the SharePoint one, but again, it's one that's very sent. Chris Kelly's a fake name, so the really interesting thing is the name that's right at the top, such and such share file, the name that was sent and the name Chris Kelly were all different. Lack of attention to detail. That could, you see that might be able to syntax maybe. It's usually sent to all contacts within a mailbox, and it's usually sent using BCC. I think BCC has a contact limit of maybe 200 people, and so we have seen like 10 emails go out to like 2,000 people spread over 10 emails. And we usually find this through various tools and message traces. And that's, again, and you'll receive that email, you'll see it's from someone that you've emailed before. We got a lot of people that say, hey, I clicked the link, but like I couldn't see the document, can you just send it to me? Just assuming it's normal stuff. And we get a lot of replies from people that we can see in the mailbox a lot of replies from people that say, hey, by the way, I clicked this and it didn't work, like what's going on? And the threat actor is now potentially in the mailbox. And you can range, so in this one, there will be 10 plus 20, maybe about 30 people, but we have seen maybe 2,500 emails across 1,500 unique domains. So some of these can be really far-reaching, and all it takes is one person to click that link, and they're on to the next victim, rinse and repeat. Alright, so how do we investigate that as DFIR analysts? How are we doing on time? Actual downside to not having the right one, can't stay. We're okay, thank you. Perfect, right, this is going swimmingly. Fantastic.
There is a clock behind you as well, if you like.
I was watching that earlier. I don't know why it's suddenly just not in my mind anymore. And to be fair, I've got one there, and I've got like
Sorry, what time is it?
So how do we as DFIR analysts investigate this kind of thing? I will give you a little bit of a warning here. People seem to be under the impression that DeFi is like a really sexy place to be. It is. It's really cool. Just a couple of nights ago, we found Ransom Hub left our home credentials on a domain controller, and we managed to break into. Well, I say break in. We used their credentials to log into their mega storage account. So it is kind of cool, but we spend a lot of time looking at logs. We spend a lot of time writing reports. The cool stuff is maybe 10-15%. Like, still to become a DeFi analyst, it is still a really cool job, but just to dispel any notions, it's not like CSI Cyber. We're not that good looking, we don't get to carry guns, and we spend a lot of time writing reports. So how do we usually kick off an engagement? Well, these attacks are usually identified after funds have been transferred, or when they've received a reply to the email saying, hey, I clicked this, didn't find anything, and whoever received the email is going, what? What are you talking about? I didn't email you. The victim then usually engages their cyber insurance provider. Yes, cyber insurance is a thing. The requirements for getting cyber insurance in Australia aren't quite as stringent as they are here in the UK. The UK, they want to see pen test reports, they want to see evidence of security controls. Australia is, is kind of like you get an IT, you get a cyber security policy, you get a cyber security, everyone gets a cyber security policy. And actually this is how we get the vast majority of our cases. They come to us through referrals through cyber insurance providers. Case in point here. Apologies, I've had to obviously 90% of that screenshot. Good news is, it's from Australia. So the cyber insurers will engage us directly, or they will engage us through a law firm. We spend an enormous amount of time talking to lawyers. Never thought I'd be doing that. I'm a technical person. I speak to lawyers a lot more than I'd like to. But for good-ish reasons, like it's not my fault. And then we'll get the notification through from the insurer, and we will initiate a scoping call with the victim organisation and find out what's happened. Once we've had the scoping call, we'll gain access to their environment. Because M365 is predominantly what we investigate, the following slides are very M365 centric. We'll gain global administrator rights to that tenancy because we have a number of tools that won't work without it. But we usually, one of the things we do when we gain access to that building account is we apply conditional access policies to make sure that only we can log into that from our VPN IP ranges. So first off is we go to the Azure portal, we query Entra ID for sign-in logs and the audit logs. Depending on your licensing level, some sign-in logs will only stay for 7 days, otherwise retention periods for 30 days. It's not fantastic. Yes, retention for sign-in stuff is not great. So if we occasionally get VCs that come through that are like, we had one like last week. There's like, oh yeah, no, we noticed this back in November. We're like, great, logs are gone. We also look at the enterprise applications and app registrations. We're particularly interested in EM client data, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll then use the Entra ID audit logs to validate any containment actions that the customer has taken, password resets, deregister and re-register data licensing, revoke session tokens, and then confirm M365 licensing. The licensing level isn't necessarily important to the investigation, but it is important to the recommendations that come afterwards. There's no point us giving them 20 recommendations that they actually need to purchase like 2 license levels higher for. That just doesn't help anybody. We then switch over to the Purview portal, previously called the Compliance portal. We will then retrieve the unified audit log for the past 6 months. I think default retention is 180 days. You can get longer depending on your licensing level. The unified audit log is honestly fantastic. It is a goldmine. I never thought I'd see the day that I'd be fanboying over a log. But here I am. No, it is absolutely fantastic. It basically takes logs from everything in Microsoft 365, SharePoint, OneDrive, Teams, Exchange, everything, and puts it into one log file.
Does it work retrospectively? Because
it does.
If it's enabled. So if you go to somebody else and enable it, you're good. What do you do then?
We have other tools to logs that we can pull.
Okay.
I'll run down in just a second. But yes, as James has just pointed out, for some bizarre reason that really just bakes my noodle. God, did I just say bake my noodle? I'm really sure my age. This is not cool. This is not enabled by default. Microsoft are slowly turning this on, but in typical Microsoft fashion, there is no timeline. They'll not tell you which regions they're doing, they won't tell you when you can expect it, it'll just be there one day. So we see it maybe about 50% of the time, but it is really, really valuable when we have it. We'll then also go in and start exporting mailboxes from impacted mailboxes that we know about. Even like a 5 gig mailbox takes a frustratingly long amount of time to export from Microsoft because you need to search for it, that'll take 2 hours. It then needs to prepare for export, which will take another 2 hours. It then needs to download, which will take another 2 hours. And sometimes we deal with mailboxes that are 120 gigs because they've been at that company for 7 years and never deleted a single email and have no idea how to use the archive function.
Is that like a PST file?
Yes. And yeah, sometimes these mailbox downloads can take days because Microsoft. We're also getting a message trace for each impacted mailbox, basically emails sent and receives, attachments, message IDs, headers, IP addresses, so we can see what was sent by who and where. We'll then turn to Hawk and Osprey. So if we don't have the unified audit log, this is what we turn to. We run them anyway, but this is our fallback in the case that we don't have unified audit log. So these are both. So Hawk is the original, Osprey is a fork of Hawk. Hawk has recently been updated, so Osprey will be set. I lose track of which one's which, so I just run them both. It is a collection of PowerShell scripts that interrogate specific API endpoints and Exchange Online, admin activity, forwarding rules, mailbox rules, the mailbox audit log, MFA devices, e-discovery administrators, who has delegate access, who doesn't have delegate access. Couldn't get a nice screenshot for this because it's all in PowerShell, and PowerShell screenshots I really don't like, I don't think they look very good. So gains upon GitHubs. And it gives us they both give us the option to investigate the tenant environment as well as individual users. For individual users, we'll get the mailbox audit logs, which is our fallback from unified audit log. Rules, delegate accesses, registered devices, mobile phones for MFA. Do they use a laptop? Do they use a desktop? Has one randomly shown up recently that we don't know about? And the tenant investigation is more about like the actual tenancy itself, who are the administrator users, what's changed recently, transport rules, has anything been automatically routed outside the mailbox, has anyone been granted delegate access to another one recently. So we've got all these logs, it's time to start investigating. Step 1 is to identify the source of the attacker. And what we do is Excel. We spend a lot of time using Excel. We basically take all the IP addresses from the sign-in logs, from the unified audit log, have it, the mailbox audit log, have it, they duplicate them and then run them through third-party enrichment tools such as Spur, IP-info. And basically what we're looking for is the low-cost VPN. ExpressVPN, Surfshark, private internet access, Mulvad, TunnelBear, HiveMap. Guarantee you, if you look at your mail, if you look at your sign-in logs and it's from something like ExpressVPN, there is an easily 80% chance that it's a threat actor. People who legitimately access corporate resources do so from residential ISP if they work from home, corporate VPN if they work from home, corporate locations if they work from home, corporate locations if they work from home, good God. Corporate locations if they work at the office, and if they work internationally or they're away on holiday, it's usually via phone. Threat actors primarily access through the browser, and they use VPN, ExpressVPN, Surfshark. So yeah, if you want to like fish people and perform this, is jump on your favourite YouTuber channel, get that 90% discount, whatever it is, for the next 3 years, and you're good to go. And it also helps us identify any other compromised accounts. So once we have the threat actors addresses, we can then start tracking them through the tenancy, and we can see what they've been up to in the mailbox. Neither of these are unified audit log, because again, in these two instances it didn't happen. And we're particularly interested in what they've been doing inside the mailbox. Update operations indicate that someone's viewed an email or an attachment. Create and send, fairly self-explanatory. Create is they've created the email, it's saved in draft. Send is they've actually sent it, it's left the draft folder. Soft delete is when they send emails like the recycle bin or deleted items folder. Hard delete is when they've tried to nuke it from the mailbox completely. And then for each of these sorts of events, we will record the message IDs. And it's mainly for like e-discovery purposes. If we're working along with a law firm, they will ask us for copies of these emails. And so we'll zip them up as here's all the ones that they actually reviewed, here's all the ones that they created, here's all the ones that they sent, here's all the ones that they tried to delete. And when it comes to exchange online, whether or not you can recover things that have been hard deleted is very much a, maybe, depending on Microsoft, because Microsoft. We can recover some things, we can't recover other things. Sometimes we recover things from a couple of years ago, but can't recover things from a couple of days ago. It's quite frustrating. SharePoint OneDrive, using the same addresses, we can track the threat actor through SharePoint OneDrive. For example, here we can see that the threat actor has looked at all their budgets, they've looked at invoices, they've looked at various bits and pieces that could contain payment details that they can use or amend, that could have personal information of people that they could extort, and gives them an idea of how much that organisation has in their bank account. Do they pounce on that invoice that's for $2,500 when they've got 2.5 mil in the bank? Do they need to wait for something that's a little bit bigger? It's fine. I was trying to figure out who it was to be like, put it on speaker so we can all share. But I know, but you look like you could be young, so.
It's actually from suspected spam.
Oh.
And they're persistent.
APT.
Exactly.
Apologies.
That's honestly, it's not a problem at all. And so yeah, once we've identified that they've looked at these things, we will extract them for review by the customer and legal teams. We talked about mailbox rules. They're used to hide activities from a legitimate owner. We've already seen that bottom screenshot, but there's a different one from the top. You can usually tell which ones, so if you know the mailbox is compromised, you're looking for mailbox rules, there's about 20 of them, you can usually tell which ones are from the threat actor, because it looks like someone sneezed on the keyboard, or it's just like ... or it's like, abracadabra, query, whatever it is. And don't get me wrong, I've set up mailbox rules myself. I hate doing it, because it's a long and arduous process, it doesn't need to be it. But I still name my mailbox rules something that I can look at it and be like, I know what that is. Not appropriate, not always appropriate for the workplace. I get a lot of junk. But I always name them in a way that it makes sense to me. I can look at them, I know what it's doing. Threat actors, however, usually set things like DOS, like the sneeze all over the keyboard. We see them where they move them to uncommonly used or checked folders. We've seen them where they actually just delete them straight away, and they stand out because of their real names. So we talked briefly about enterprise applications, EM client and Epic Data. One of the things that we are trying to determine is the likelihood of mailbox synchronization. If the threat actor uses a web browser, then yeah, they've accessed the email, they've accessed the mailbox, they could have downloaded emails and things, but there is no inherent default synchronization. Whereas if you open your mailbox in Outlook, Outlook creates a local OST file on your desktop. You might not necessarily know where that is, but it is a local copy of the mailbox that persists after Outlook is closed, meaning that the threat actor could potentially have copies of the entire mailbox. The UAL, the audit logs will show the user agent string, browser versus Outlook client. EM client is fairly regularly seen. It's a free mail client that will create a local OST file. Perfect Data we also see fairly regularly. It is an inbox or mailbox backup and restoration tool. It actually just soak it all up and puts it up to the cloud. Mailbox exports. I talked briefly about mailbox exports. We know that the actor's been in there. We need to acquire copies of emails, and we need to provide them to legal teams for review and analysis. We use Intella Insight, which is actually not too bad. We previously used Axiom. Not great. Good for processing CAPE images and compromised machines. Not great processing compromised mailboxes. we use it to find we also use it to find the initial access and the end game phishing emails. If we're able to find the initial access email, it just helps us, put it to and say, hey, this is the email someone clicks. 9 times out of 10, when they see it, they go, oh, yeah, that was totally me. Bye bye, guys. Like, it just cost you like $20,000. What do you mean, my bad? And some people get like really upset about it. Some people get really upset about it. Well, you guys are users of technology. Technology is meant to make your life easier. You're not experts in technology. We are all experts in technology. Whether you're a first-year uni student by virtue of being in this room, you probably know more about technology and cybersecurity than the vast majority of other people. Surgeons are good at doing surgery, I hope. Opticians are good at checking your eyes. Pharmacists are good with drugs. I'm really struggling to think of something that isn't healthcare related. But I wouldn't presume to know how to do their job better than they do. They are users of technology. Technology is meant to complement their life and make it easier. And so, yeah, the point being, people can get quite upset by this. We talked about collecting message IDs. We use Intella to pull it out. And we also use it to personally identify information. Tax file numbers is essentially the Australian equivalent to a national insurance number. Driver's licenses, passports, bank details, credit card numbers. Which the law firms have a great fun with, because they're like, oh, send them all to us. And I was like, but there's 15,000 results here. Can we be a bit more specific, please? And I've got a touchy thing wrong there, that's fine. I'll put that down so you can try last night. It also allows us to carve up entire mailboxes. So down the left-hand side at the top there, when you see your inbox, it's nice and formatted. You've got your inbox, you've got various folders, spam, deleted items, archives. This categorises everything that's been ripped out of Exchange and puts it in nice folders for us, which is nice. If data has been deleted, we can recover it more often than not, but your mileage may vary because Microsoft. We also use Intella for e-discovery purposes, PII, PHI, kind of discussed. And we pull all emails that were touched by the effect for analysis by review by the victim legal teams. And the other thing I really like about Intella that I haven't touched on in these slides, I need to stop on and clear that camera because if there's anyone watching, it's a blank screen.
We can't see you anyway.
Sorry?
We can't see you anyway. So it's dark.
Oh, right, yeah, of course, cool.
Wander away.
Sorry?
You can wander away.
Yes, right, cool, fantastic. I literally just there was no reason to wander over there, I just wanted to. I don't know how many people you're talking about. The other reason I really like Intella is it lets us look through emails, headers, raw data, metadata, properties without having to navigate Outlook. Outlook can be like really clunky if you're trying to go through like 10, 15, 20 emails at a time. It also helps us build like, email chains. Down the bottom there, you can preview the emails that came before and the emails that came after, or we can build it into a chain and see exactly what happened when. So putting it all together, this is where I've tried to smush like 3 screenshots in one, so I do apologise. So when we've talked about the kind of logs that we gather, we've talked about the kind of artifacts that we were looking for, we've talked about how we kind of process these things, how do we put it together. We use the DFIR Instant Response Investigation System, or IRIS. It was originally created, it's an open source tool originally created by Airbus. It's now supported by somebody else. It's essentially it is our single pane of truth. When it comes to our investigations, if it's not in IRIS, it didn't happen. We can build timelines. We can use it to record the events of the timeline, indicate compromise, assets, accounts, devices, usernames, and we use it to kind of like stitch everything together. And it is very much our single pane of truth. What's particularly interesting, that's unrelated to BECs, we've had a couple of ransomware engagements over the past year where actually IRIS has been able to tell us that it is by the same threat actor because they use the same egress node, they use the same host name, and they create the same usernames for like persistence when they're in the environment. James literally talked about attribution in his last talk, so I will not try. But we do know it's the same. We do know it's the same person. Couldn't tell you who they are or who they work for. It doesn't provide value, debatable, but it is kind of interesting. Oh my God, we saw them 6 months ago, and we can pull all our findings and our IOCs and our TTPs from 6 months ago forward to hopefully make our investigation go a lot faster. Then communications, believe it or not, I do a lot of talking. Just in general, I talk here, I talk at work. It's amazing that people don't like mute me or tell me just the STFU. Because I would if I was there. So we keep in touch with the victim constantly throughout the engagement. We will speak to them 4 or 5 times a week. They're obviously going through a difficult time. We want to be very visible. We want to make sure that they know that we are there for them. I get to meet some very, very interesting people. It's just a shame that it is probably during some of the darkest periods of that company's life. Regular update calls, we have slides. They're kind of cool. And then every customer, regardless whether it's a BEC, whether it's a ransomware, whether it's a we think it but it isn't, gets a full report within 2 weeks of investigation completing. The reports are actually, I quite like them. We format them like after the MITRE ATT&CK framework, just to follow from like initial access all the way through to like impact, exploitation, and so on and so forth. They can be, I've spent a lot of time with writing them. Don't know if anyone reads them, but I spend a lot of time writing them. And recommendations, we do provide recommendations, but we provide them separately for legal reasons. Legal reasons, you say? What could possibly have legal reasons for? Oh my God, we're running out of time. Right, cool. Legal reasons, because if we put recommendations in the report and we talk about the organisation in general, then people can then look at the organisation in general instead of just this particular incident. We're doing so well for time. Cool, let's run through some recommendations. I do apologise if this is really quick. We do the report. We do recommendations to prevent the same type of incident from occurring in the future and hopefully improve the victim's overall security posture. We try and implement recommendations and a defence in depth approach to layer of security so that if one control fails, there is a compensating control to pick up for it. Enable and enforce multi-factor authentication. It prevents basic credential harvesting. Reset compromised account passwords and revoke active session tokens. If the threat actor has an active session token, they can renew it on a periodic basis and maintain access to your mailbox for multiple weeks. Revoking the session token will sever the threat actor's access to the mailbox. Consider implementing conditional access policies, restrict how, when, where users can access certain resources from. Consider using risk or device-based conditional access policies. If someone's suddenly signing in from a rack when they've never been signed in from a rack before, that's probably something that we want them to re-authenticate for. If they are signing in from a device that has never been seen before, that's probably something we want to double check and make them re-authenticate for. Implement session token protections. Limit the lifespan of session tokens. Disallow the use of session tokens on unauthenticated devices. Implement bank detail change process. Verbally confirm bank detail changes. Do not pay until they have been confirmed. It doesn't matter if you have to phone them 20,000 times. Phone them 20,000 times. Otherwise, you might actually find that you're paying that invoice twice. Remove the ability for users to install enterprise applications, stops mailbox synchronization through EM client and perfect data. If needed, because it's a small environment, consider having the MSP set up privileged identity management for just-in-time privilege escalations. That's the same recommendation. Cool. We're kind of out of time for questions. I will hand back to the team. However, I am the guy that's wearing the hoodie with that logo on it. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to come and ask me anytime. It's not a problem at all. Happy to answer questions about the content, happy to answer questions about life, the universe, everything. Just don't ask me for my passwords. Thank you very much, everyone.